Bookers, this is Gabby and today we are talking about all the books I read in July. So, I am back with a video, which feels like it's been forever since I filmed one, and I am back because we bounced back from the atrocity that was June, and now I've read 10 books in July, so, you know, that's all good and fun and impressive and blah, blah, blah. I don't know what I'm saying. I don't know what I'm saying. But let's just jump into the books I read. So, like I said, 10 books. In order I read them. Let's discuss. So, firstly, let's go with the two remaining Silvia Moreno Garcia's, three remaining Silvia Moreno Garcia's actually that I read this month. It feels like that was forever. That was this month. What? Anyway, I was doing a little let's read every single release by Silvia Moreno Garcia because I got an arc of Daughter of Dr. Moreau, and I have read almost all of her books. I read 5. I did a video where I talk about them. You can check that out for very detailed thoughts. But I have read Gods of Jane and Shadow, which is a fantasy inspired by Mayan gods, and it's about a Mayan god that gets released from his prison and we have to go on a road trip to find his body's parts. Then we have Velvet Was the Night, which is a 1970s, I think, a noir book set in Mexico, where we have our main character who's kind of a single lady in her 30s, and she wants to find out what happened to her neighbor who just kind of disappeared, and she gets pulled into this plot of students fighting for freedom and all that. Loved, 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 loved. 5 stars. Liked 3 stars. And then I read Daughter of Dr. Moreau, which is the author's newest release. So that one is about a girl who lives on an island with her father, and this island is very isolated. No one can really just come and go because the doctor does freakish experiments on the island, and he doesn't want anyone butting their nose in it. I liked it. I gave it 4 stars if I remember correctly. I gave it 3.5. I did really enjoy it. It was fun, but it didn't blow me away nearly as much as her other books, so that's kind of shifted my opinion there. Oh, and Mexican Gothic. I am so all over the place. I legit cannot find it. Oh, there it is. I am a mess. Mexican Gothic, I read this one as well in that video. Jesus, it's hot. And this one is a Gothic novel, and we follow the main character as she goes to this creepy mansion, middle of nowhere, Mexico, to see what's up with her cousin who's been sending super weird messages. So I gave this one 5 stars, and probably my favorite Silvia Moreno Garcia. It's amazing. These 3 plus The Beautiful Ones and Certain Dark Things last month, and Daughter of Dr. Moreau, so I'll link both videos if you want to check those out. But on to more interesting topics which I've not talked about yet. Let's talk about The Memory Librarian and Other Stories. So this book is by Janelle Monáe, and it's very interesting. So this is kind of like a short story collection, a little bit, but it's a companion piece to an album by Janelle Monáe, and I've listened to the all album after reading the book because I thought it was very interesting, and I picked up this book as an audiobook, and it's basically, like I said, collection of short stories, but they're all focused around future and kind of almost like a dystopian future. And the biggest story, the longest story, is the whole Memory Librarian, which kind of what was I expected the memory police to be. So in this main story, we follow a world where people's memories can be taken out of their head, and there's this place called the Memory Library, and that's where kind of the memories get stored, but the memories and the collection of them are used as a intimidation tactic and a means to control the population. It's about, you know, people realizing what kind of place they live in and the impact that has on them and that kind of stuff. So it's very interesting. I really liked it. I thought all of the stories were super interesting. Like literally the only story I didn't really care about was the last story, but everything else was just so, even the last story wasn't bad, it was just not as good, but everything else was so fascinating, and it was so well written and like really thoughtful, and I was really surprised how much I enjoyed it. The audiobook was really well performed and just had so many thought-provoking ideas that really resonated, and it was a lot about gender identity. I'm pretty sure almost all main characters in each stories were gay. There's a lot of lesbian couples, a lot of gender queerness, a lot of questions, you know, about identity and how society can be controlled and breaking out of that. And that was all really fascinating. So like 5 out of 5, really cool sci-fi short story collection. But I feel like the short stories felt quite beefy and there was enough content in them and to really tell a good story. So I feel like sometimes with short stories, it is like just an idea. Someone had like an idea and was like, this is cool, but it's not quite a complete story. Whereas these, it was, I think it was only 5 or something. There really weren't that many stories, but each of them had its time and had a full story it wanted to tell, and then how it came all together was really fascinating as well. So I really like this book. 5 stars. Totally would recommend if you're a sci-fi fan and like talking about these kind of dystopian questions and conundrums. I would 100% recommend. Next up, I read Aurora's End by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. So if you don't know, along with some friends, namely Kira, Sasha, and Femke, we are doing this read-along group that's called Read Along Queens, and we read a different series every 3 months, then every 4 months we start a new series, and the Aurora cycle was our current read, but Aurora's End is the last book in the series. So we are done with that read now, and we're gonna be reading Founder's trilogy now, with the Foundry side being the first book. So if you wanna join that, I'm gonna link everything down below, but join us on Twitter. It's gonna be fun. Aurora's End. I was shocked because I gave it 5 stars. I honestly had such a good time with this book. It was really fun. It was fast-paced. It was high stakes. Like, I think that's the main thing that felt for me. It was really high stakes, and it was clearly well thought through. The ideas were there from the beginning, so it was just kind of like following through. I really liked it. I'm like, was it a 5-star quality book? No. Did I enjoy it 5 stars? Yes. So we're gonna keep the 5 stars, but it was really fun. No spoilers, obviously, so I can't talk too much. But overall, book 1 and 2 were 3 stars, and this book came out of nowhere. I really loved it. I don't know if the whole thing is worth for just the finale. Next up, I read a weird one. I keep picking up all these random books on Scribd because I don't have anything for videos that I need from Scribd. So I'm just reading like whatever tickles my fancy at the moment, and it's been working out good. Like I've read Memory Librarian, then I read Everyone Knows Your Mother is a Witch, which is by Rivka Galchen. So this one is a historical fiction, and we follow a woman, like a 70-year-old woman in Germany, I'm assuming 1500s, I don't remember, and she gets accused of being a witch. And then it's basically this whole witch hunt and like the prosecution, and you hear from people accusing her and like what their motivations were and why they decided to accuse her. And like it was so interesting because she's not like a young woman, and she's quite old for, you know, the times as well. So she had a good life, and it's just like you see the motivations of why she got called a witch, and it kind of brings into focus how greedy, selfish, self-centered people can be and follow this mob mentality, which I thought was really interesting. And overall, it wasn't fun. I think the audiobook made it better. It was really good. I said it wasn't fun. It wasn't like, oh my god, I love this book so much, it was so much fun, so funny. It wasn't like funny, haha. It was funny, sad. Depressing. Humanity sucks. That's the kind of fun it was. But it was really witty, it was really quick-witted, and really showed, again, those prejudices and those like what people might have thought in some instances. So that was interesting. I had a good time with it. I think the audiobook made it really engaging. The audiobook narrator did a really good job. But in the end, I gave it 3 stars because it didn't like speak to my soul. But I think maybe someone will be interested in it, and it's not badly written at all. So I would still recommend. Another random script pickup. It's called The End of Man by Christina Sweeney Baird. So to be fair, this one I didn't pick up super randomly. I picked it up because there was a day on Twitter. On TikTok. There was a day on TikTok, I swear. I saw this book 10 times. Everyone was reading this book for like 2 days on TikTok, and that's it. I've never seen it since. I've never seen it before. 2 days on TikTok, that's it. So I was so fascinated because everyone all of a sudden was like, the end of man, the end of man. So I don't know if this was paid PR. If yes, good job, because you really got that. Everyone posted at the same time, so people start being like, what's this? And people put no context. They were just like, oh my god, this is so good. End of Man, that's the title. So let me tell you what it's about. We follow a world where there's a pandemic, and the pandemic is an illness that kind of mimics, I guess, maybe flu-like symptoms, but it's super, super aggressive, spreads really quickly, and only affects men. So this book is the finding of this illness, beginning of the pandemic, going through the pandemic, and aftermath of the pandemic, finding the vaccine and how society looked after, because it was something like 9 in 10 men will die from this disease. So like 1 in 10 was immune and the rest will die. And it was fascinating. It was really, really interesting because I went into it thinking it was like a dystopian, and I guess maybe to an extent it was, but I thought it was going to be turned post-apocalyptic. But it was more about the impact on society and then also on individual women. So there's many, many perspectives in it, and audiobook was full cast as well, which is really cool. We follow these women and their individual story, and then also it's about discovering how that impacts society, how we move on and grow and survive. And it was fascinating. It was a little hard to read, I'm not gonna lie, considering, you know, we just went through a pandemic. God knows there might be one more on the way, and this one's not even properly over. So I wouldn't read it if you're not in the mood for that. It was intense. Apparently this book started, like the author started writing it before the pandemic. I saw something like that written, but I didn't look into it. If yes, kudos, because I think it was pretty accurate to what happened in real life, some of it, how it was treated and stuff like that. So it was really fascinating. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really interesting look at the world and what would happen. And just, yeah, it was very compassionate. I saw a review on Script and it was like, it was the most far-fetched, ridiculous thing I've ever seen. It was blah, blah, blah. And it was by a man. And I was like, of course it was. I mean, come on now. What was far-fetched about it? I mean, nothing was far-fetched about it, really. Like, okay, the one thing far-fetched is they became a disease that only affected men, but they explained pretty well. I thought, I'm not in any way educated in biology, and I enjoyed the book, and I just thought it was funny because of course you're gonna hate it. You're a man. That's what you guys do. So I gave it 4 stars, and it was a joke. Next, I read Juniper and Thorn by Eva Reed. So this is second book by the author of Wolf and the Woodsman, yeah, which is a dark fairy tale, and this is kind of set apparently in the same universe, which gives me a lot to think about. But anyway, it's set in the same universe, and in this one we follow, it's a retelling of the Juniper Tree by Brothers Grimm. I've never ever heard of that book in my life, and before doing research for this I didn't even know that this was a retelling. Seems like it's a very loose retelling. I've read the synopsis on Wikipedia of the old tale, but in this one we follow Marlichin, who is a daughter of the last wizard in Oblia, which is the city they live in. This last wizard, he's got 3 daughters. All of them live in this isolated place, and it's story filled with pain, gruesome shit, abuse, and just a lot. But there's gonna be a full review coming, So check that out when it comes out. I'm not going to tell you too much. I'm not going to tell you what I thought. And then the last book I read in month of July was 9 Lives by Peter Swanson. So this is this author's newest thriller, and it's basically like a spin on And There Were None. So 9 strangers get a letter in the mail, and in the letter is just 9 names. No, nothing else, no explanation, nothing, just 9 names. And the person who got it is, each person who got it is on the list, but none of them know the other people on the list. And then they start dying one by one. Personally, I think this book was a mess. Yeah, it was a mess. I don't like how it was written. It felt so like scattered. I listened to the audiobook in fairness, and there was only one narrator, and it took me half the book to even figure out who was who. And then they kept dying. I was like, who's that? And then they didn't even like drop a hint about who that person was. We just need to not remember. It's like, ugh, so annoying. It's my bad. I read the audiobook, but at the same time you produced the audiobook, so you thought it was fine. It wasn't fine. I was so confused. But that's like one thing. Then the characters were so uncompelling. I don't think I cared about single one of them. There were 2 that I was like, I guess if you didn't die, it'd be nice. But I didn't care. I did not care. Failed. And then there was like, middle of the book, there was this random ass bounty hunter plot that just went on for a couple chapters and left. It was so weird. And then there's like these perspectives that are not connected, but they're perspectives of the people. A mess. And then this book wanted to be And Then There Were None so bad, which is a book I love. That it's not subtle, you know, it keeps telling you in the book, they read the book and they compare it to what's happening. It's not subtle, I understand that, and I appreciate at least the honesty. But how do I say this? It failed on every level, and then the killer's motivation, oh my god. The most stupid, contrived, nonsensical thing I've ever heard in my life. There was one surprise. I was surprised once, but I didn't care enough to be surprised. So I was like, oh, cool. That's it. I did really dislike this book. I gave it 1 star on Goodreads. I put 1.5 in the spreadsheet because it wasn't like unpleasant to read, but it just gave me nothing. It was like Go On Girl gave me nothing. I've read many books that are trying to be and then there were none. None of them particularly succeed, but this one really didn't. So that's like the lowest. I think this is the lowest rating of all books I read this year. But I DNF'd one because it was so bad. I guess I technically DNF'd another one, but I might come back to it, but I was just not having fun. Those were all of the books I read in July. I really hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know, have you read any of them? What did you think? If yes, how many books did you read in July? What was your favorite? My favorite? Mexican Gothic, or Gods of Jade and Shadow. Check out all those videos I mentioned, stay tuned, and I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.